What if the person you just humiliated in public could afford to buy everything you own? And then some. That's the question no one at Valmora Lux and Skincare expected to answer when a woman walked into their flagship store on Madison Avenue, dressed in elegant simplicity, and was thrown out as if she were invisible. They didn't know her name. They didn't ask. But they were about to find out. And when they did, it would already be too late. Layla Monroe stood beneath the towering glass facade of Valmora Lux, one of the most prestigious luxury skincare boutiques in New York City. The early autumn sun reflected off the brushed gold letters above the entrance. To any passerby, she looked like a woman running an errand. Dark denim jeans, a cream-colored cashmere sweater, and a quiet confidence that spoke of someone used to being in control. She wasn't flanked by assistants or hiding behind oversized designer logos. She didn't need to be. Layla Monroe's presence was power enough. Inside, the store gleamed with curated opulence. Italian marble floors, shimmering crystal chandeliers, and product displays as refined as museum exhibits. The sales staff, clad in sleek black uniforms with custom leather iPad cases, floated around the boutique like stylized shadows, each trained to recognize a high-value customer from the moment they walked in. But not her. Layla had arrived precisely at 11:30 a.m., dropped off by her town car. She'd told her driver, "Take your lunch break, Reggie. I'll call when I'm done." This wasn't her first visit to a Valmora store. She'd frequented their Miami branch multiple times, but this was the first time she'd come alone in New York on an unassuming Wednesday. She entered the boutique, pausing for a moment to admire the interior, not with wonder, but with an architect's eye for symmetry. For several long minutes, she waited by the entrance. No one greeted her. 3 white women entered after her. The first, an elegant older woman in a tailored Dior jacket and crocodile handbag, was immediately embraced by name. "Mrs. Vanderfield, so wonderful to see you again. Shall we get the champagne while you browse your new arrivals?" The second, a younger woman with yoga-toned arms and a tennis skirt, was guided to the VIP skincare lounge. The third, barely through the door in a mink-trimmed coat despite the mild September breeze, was met with a flurry of attention. "Looking for something special today," the associate gushed. "We just got the limited edition A Luna line. Only 50 sets in the U.S. Still, no one acknowledged Layla. Her expression didn't falter. She moved deeper into the boutique, passing display cases of $200 cleansers and $150 moisturizers. She headed for the rear, the San Viel collection. 6 rare botanical-based products housed in hand-blown glass vessels, capped with sustainably harvested pearl stoppers. Retail price? $5,800. Only 100 sets worldwide. Layla examined the ingredients carefully. Her mother had suffered from painful skin rashes when Layla was a child, caused by cheap, over-fragranced drugstore lotions. That memory had followed her into adulthood. Now that she could afford the best, she didn't buy blindly. She researched, consulted chemists, and read every label. She was midway through the list of ingredients when she felt a presence behind her. Not the helpful presence of a sales associate, but something colder. Turning, she was met by a tall man with immaculately styled silver hair and a tailored navy suit. His name tag was smaller than the rest, Cameron Latimer, store director. He gave a tight-lipped smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Can I help you find the exit?" he asked with a soft tone laced in sharp condescension. Layla's brow lifted slightly. "Excuse me?" "This isn't a museum," he said. "These items require a serious financial commitment. They're not for browsing." She blinked. "I wasn't browsing. I was planning to purchase the full San Viel collection." His eyes flicked over her outfit. No logos, no diamonds. Just the glint of a modest wedding band. It gave him pause for half a second. "These products start at over $5,000. We've had issues with certain individuals handling them without the means to purchase," he said. Certain individuals. The words dropped like poison. I'm going to have to ask for proof of income or purchasing intent. Otherwise, I'll have to ask you to leave, he said flatly. Layla's spine straightened. I've never been asked to show my tax returns before buying a moisturizer, she said, her voice still calm. Her gaze drifted toward the other clients, white women sipping champagne, trying samples and giggling in the VIP lounge. No ID checks, no income questions. Cameron's mask slipped just enough to reveal the disdain underneath. Are you looking for handouts? Influencer freebies? Because we don't do that here. This is a premium environment, and we reserve our time for real clients. Security, Cameron called out. Two men appeared almost instantly, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in tailored black suits. Without asking questions, they each took an arm, lifting Layla gently but firmly off her feet and escorting her through the store. Other customers watched. Some looked away, pretending not to notice. Others pulled out their phones, filming what they knew was an ugly situation. Cameron followed a few steps behind, arms crossed, watching her humiliation like a victory lap. Outside, the guards shoved her through the glass doors. Layla stumbled but caught herself before hitting the sidewalk. She smoothed her sweater, adjusted her collar, and took out her phone. The wedding ring on her finger glinted under the sun, an emerald-cut diamond that cost more than Cameron Latimer's 5-year salary. She dialed a number she knew by heart. Caleb, she said when he answered. Her voice was calm but electric with anger. You're not going to believe what just happened to me at Valmer Lux. What Cameron Latimer didn't know, what no one in that boutique could have guessed, was who Layla Monroe really was, and who Caleb Monroe, her husband, was about to become. Not just their biggest nightmare, but their new boss. The floor-to-ceiling windows of the Monroe residence shimmered with late afternoon sunlight as Layla stepped into their penthouse overlooking Central Park. The apartment, minimalist yet warm, was filled with soft textures, earthy tones, and the calm scent of white tea diffusing gently from hidden vents. She slipped off her flats and placed her phone on the marble kitchen counter, exhaling the moment she heard Caleb's voice from down the hallway. Marcus, I don't care if it costs us double, Caleb Monroe was saying into his phone. I want the store bought within the next 2 hours. No negotiations, no delays. Layla's breath caught, her frustration mixing now with apprehension. She rounded the corner and saw him pacing, sharp in a tailored navy sweater and slacks, one hand gripping his phone, the other clenched at his side. At 6'3", with a frame honed by early morning boxing sessions, Caleb was a formidable figure, one whose name alone sent markets into motion. But right now, he was just her husband, furious, protective, and unwilling to wait for justice. As soon as he saw her, Caleb ended the call in a heartbeat and crossed the room in long strides, pulling her into his arms. I'm so sorry, baby, he whispered into her hair. Thomas called me the second he saw what was happening. He watched it all from the car. Layla pulled back slightly, her hand resting on his chest. I'm okay, she said, though her voice wavered. They kicked me out of the store, Caleb. They humiliated me in front of everyone. And not because I was rude or caused a scene, but because I didn't look like I belonged. He took a deep breath, fighting the impulse to throw something. His voice was low and dangerous when he said, And now they're going to find out exactly who you are. Don't do anything reckless, she said, reaching for his hand. I know your instincts. I know you want to burn the place down, but that's not the way. This isn't about revenge, Caleb replied, his eyes fierce. This is about accountability. Their eyes locked. No words needed. They understood each other. Two self-made individuals who had climbed mountains others couldn't even see. Layla moved to the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of cucumber water as she processed the events of the day. It's not the first time I've dealt with this, she said quietly, but every time it happens, it chips away at something. And how many people does it happen to who don't have the platform you do? Caleb asked, his voice laced with anger. People who get treated like criminals for daring to step foot in a luxury store because they don't fit some racist visual profile? She turned to face him. What exactly are you planning? Before he could answer, his phone buzzed again. He looked at the screen, tapped it to accept, and put it on speaker. "Talk to me, Marcus," he said. His chief legal counsel's voice was clear and crisp. "We mapped the entire corporate structure of Valmora's parent company. It's owned by Orion Prestige Group, publicly traded but privately influenced. There's a weakness. They took a significant hit last quarter, and there's movement among shareholders. If we start buying aggressively tonight, we could have controlling interest by the time they open tomorrow." Caleb's eyes didn't leave Layla's. "How fast can we make it happen?" "If we go all in now, I'll have 51% locked by 4 a.m. "Do it, and Marcus, no leaks. I want total silence until I say otherwise." "Understood." The call ended. Layla sipped her water slowly, her mind racing. "You're really going to buy the whole company?" "I'm going to own their world," Caleb said, sitting down at the dining table and pulling his laptop toward him. "And then I'm going to rebuild it." She hesitated. Buying a company just to fire one manager seems overkill. Caleb looked up. "This isn't about one manager. It's about the culture that allows someone like Cameron Latimer to thrive. You think this was the first time he's done this? How many customers has he mistreated just for not looking the part? How many qualified job applicants were ignored because their skin tone didn't match the brand's image?" Layla's shoulders relaxed a little. He wasn't acting out of ego, he was thinking bigger, broader, with purpose. She walked over, stood behind him, and rested her hands on his shoulders. "So, what's your real plan?" "We take it over," he said. "We gut the culture. We fire everyone complicit in this elitism. We rebuild Valmora from the ground up, and we turn it into something the industry's never seen. Luxury without prejudice." Layla nodded slowly, her own ideas already taking shape. "We don't just punish them. We set a new standard, inclusion with excellence." "Exactly." He turned to face her. "And I want you to lead it." Her eyes widened. "Me?" She didn't say yes. She didn't need to. The look in her eyes said everything. At 9:58 a.m. the next morning, traffic on Madison Avenue seemed to pause as a slate-gray Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the curb in front of Valmora Luxe and Skincare. Its doors opened in choreographed unison. From the first car stepped Layla Monroe. Gone was the casual outfit from the day before. In its place was a white tailored pantsuit that shimmered slightly in the morning light. Her hair was pulled into a high braided crown, adorned with a single gold pin. No logos, no jewelry beyond the diamond ring that whispered rather than screamed wealth. She didn't need to say a word. From the second Rolls-Royce, Caleb Monroe stepped out. His custom charcoal suit fit like it had been stitched onto his frame. Behind them, 4 matte black Escalades arrived, releasing a dozen executives in business attire, each holding embossed leather portfolios bearing the Monroe Industries logo. Inside the store, employees gathered by the windows, jaws slack. "It can't be them," one whispered. That's the guy from Forbes, the billionaire," another muttered. Cameron Latimer emerged from the back office, adjusting his tie. He plastered on the smile he reserved for high-spending clients. "Whatever's happening out there," he said to his assistant, "they're still customers. Remember that." At 10 a.m. sharp, the doors opened. Layla entered first, then Caleb, then their entire team. The energy in the boutique shifted like a dropped chandelier. Cameron rushed forward. "Welcome to Valmora. It's an honor to have you with us today," he said, extending his hand toward Caleb. Neither Monroe took it. Instead, Caleb stepped forward, his voice calm and authoritative. "I believe you met my wife yesterday." Cameron froze. Layla met his gaze. Her face revealed nothing, but the quiet fire behind her eyes made him visibly shrink. A staff member dropped a bottle behind the counter. Another tried to edge toward the back room, blocked by one of Caleb's people. You didn't just humiliate my wife, Caleb said. You revealed your entire culture, your values. And unfortunately for you, your values are now under new ownership. He nodded to one of his legal team members who handed Cameron a thick envelope. Cameron opened it with trembling hands. Inside, purchase documents, ownership transfer agreements. Caleb continued, as of 4:30 this morning, Monroe Holdings owns 54% of Orion Prestige Group, which makes us the controlling interest behind Valmora Lux. He let the silence settle like dust. The staff stared in disbelief. We're not here to shop, Layla added, her voice clear and even. We're here to change everything. Inside Valmora Lux, the marble floor reflected the heels of Layla Monroe as she walked past stunned employees toward the center of the boutique. Her every step echoed through the hushed space like the ticking of a countdown. Caleb followed, his hands in his pockets, eyes sweeping across the room with the calm authority of someone who knew he held the future of everyone present in his hands. A dozen executives from Monroe Holdings fanned out like clockwork, each one sliding behind counters, checking systems, inspecting displays, or taking notes. It was clear this wasn't a symbolic visit. This was a full-scale corporate audit, executed with ruthless precision. Cameron Latimer stood frozen near the entryway, the ownership document still in his hands. He scanned the first page again, then the second, his eyes wide with disbelief. This has to be a mistake, he whispered, though no one answered. You've got about 3 minutes before opening, one of Caleb's staff told the Valmora team. Gather all available employees on the floor. Mr. Monroe would like to speak with everyone. The staff complied instinctively, their usual polish shattered by confusion and fear. Associates scrambled to put down iPads and adjust uniforms. Security guards edged closer to the back, unsure whether to stay or disappear. Cameron was no longer issuing orders, and that alone told everyone the hierarchy had changed. By 10:04 a.m., the staff had formed an uneasy semicircle at the center of the boutique. Layla stood beside Caleb. She didn't need to speak. Her presence alone was enough to charge the air. Caleb took one step forward, the silence stretching with anticipation. Good morning, he said. Let me be clear about why we're here. Yesterday, my wife was publicly humiliated in this very space. She was profiled, degraded, and physically removed from a store where she intended to spend over $20,000. The number hit the staff like a wave of cold water. Caleb continued, She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cause a scene. She was calm, respectful, and serious about her purchase. But she wasn't wearing a Chanel jacket or carrying a Birkin, and so she was dismissed. Several sales associates looked down. One bit her lip, another rubbed her wrist nervously. What happened yesterday, Caleb said, his voice cool and even, was not an isolated incident. It was the result of a system, a culture, that encourages gatekeeping, exclusion, and racial profiling, all disguised as protecting the brand. He turned to Cameron. And that culture ends today. He nodded to his chief of staff, who stepped forward and lowered the blinds with a tap on her phone. The boutique dimmed. The first woman stepped forward. My name is Dr. Corinne Madison, Chief of Oncology at Midtown Medical Center, she said, her voice unwavering. Last month, I came in to purchase gift sets for my surgical team. I was told, without even being asked what I was looking for, that there were more affordable options down the street. I left empty-handed. The young Latino man followed. Mateo Rivera, hedge fund manager. I spent $28,000 on gifts here last year alone. But 2 weeks ago, I was followed the entire time I shopped. Never greeted, never asked if I needed help. Just watched like I was a threat. The testimonies continued. Each one struck a blow, not because of the anger in their voices, but because of their restraint. Their quiet, dignified retelling of pain. Layla's hands were clasped in front of her. Her expression remained neutral, but anyone who knew her well could see the fire in her eyes. Cameron Latimer tried to interject. We deal with influencers all the time. It's hard to tell who's real and who's just pretending to shop. Caleb raised one eyebrow. Interesting, because from what I can tell, you've only ever questioned the pretend status of people of color. He nodded again. From the back came three more individuals. This time, they wore business attire and name tags, former Valmora employees. I was a floor supervisor here for 4 years, said the first. During training, we were told to assess clients visually before engaging. When I asked what that meant, my manager said, "You'll know when you see it." I was fired after complaining about the way black clients were treated differently, said the second. They said I had a negative attitude. I left because my commissions were being siphoned away, assigned to other staff if my client wasn't VIP enough. The room was dead silent. Cameron now looked less like a manager and more like a prisoner awaiting sentence. Caleb stepped forward again. Cameron Latimer, your employment with Valmore Lux is terminated, effective immediately. You may collect your things under escort. You will not return. No, Cameron breathed. Please, this store is my life. I built this. Exactly, Layla said, speaking for the first time since the presentations began. And look what you built. Cameron looked around, desperate for allies. None stepped forward. The same staff who had once followed his every word now stared at the floor, avoiding his eyes. Security, Monroe Holdings Security, stepped forward. Cameron was led out the side door, his legacy undone in 30 minutes of truth. Caleb turned back to the remaining staff. You're not all to blame, but if you participated in this culture, even through silence, you'll need to prove you're ready to do better. He paused. Starting today, Valmora Lux is undergoing a full rebrand. Every store will be temporarily closed for restructuring. We're not destroying the brand. We're rebuilding it. There were gasps, murmurs, and even a few tears. Some knew they wouldn't be invited back. Some knew they didn't deserve to be. But others, those who had tried to intervene or who had quietly objected, stood straighter. Layla stepped forward, her voice clear and powerful. This isn't about canceling people, it's about change. If you've treated every client with respect, you'll have the opportunity to reapply. If you haven't, consider this a lesson, not a punishment. She gestured to a young associate standing near the rear. What's your name? Bethany, the girl said nervously. You tried to speak up yesterday, didn't you? Bethany nodded, lips pressed tight. You'll be hearing from me, Layla said with a soft smile. Caleb nodded to his team. Termination packets were distributed, severance packages handed out. Each one tailored, each one final. By noon, the doors of every Valmora store across the country were closed. The industry was watching, and a transformation was underway. The morning after the mass closures of Valmora Lux stores across the country, headlines blazed across financial networks and social media like wildfire. Tech billionaire Caleb Monroe acquires Valmora in surprise overnight takeover. Luxury without prejudice. The Layla Monroe incident that changed the industry. Valmora's quiet culture of exclusion exposed by viral footage and billion-dollar backlash. Within 24 hours, the once celebrated brand had become a cautionary tale, with journalists dissecting its systemic failures, customers demanding transparency, and former employees flooding message boards with anonymous accounts. Most of them disturbing, many infuriating. But while the public consumed the fallout like entertainment, inside the Monroe residence, the energy was focused, deliberate, and intensely personal. Layla stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of their Manhattan penthouse, a mug of chamomile tea in her hands. Below her, the city churned as always. Taxis honking, joggers crossing the park, a man in a suit yelling into his Bluetooth. But inside all was calm. Behind her, Caleb sat at the long walnut table that served as both workspace and war room, reviewing a list of regional managers under Valmora's umbrella. A large whiteboard behind him detailed project milestones, rebranding timelines, legal strategies, and something written in bold across the top. Legacy, luxury, without the barriers. Layla took a sip of her tea, then turned to face him. You know what scares me the most? Caleb looked up. Tell me. That we're not just changing a brand, she said quietly. We're threatening a belief system, one built on exclusion, and when you threaten belief systems, people push back. Hard. He nodded. I know. She walked over and placed the tea on the table. I've spent my whole life moving through these spaces, being the only one like me in the room, quietly making sure I was never too much, never too loud, never too black, too poor, too confident. Caleb reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. You don't have to do that anymore. But others still do, she said. And they're watching. This can't just be about showing Valmore what they did wrong. It has to show everyone what we can do right. He leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. You're thinking bigger. I always was, she said with a small smile. That afternoon, Layla and Caleb hosted a private summit on the 52nd floor of the Monroe Industries headquarters. Seated around a circular conference table were key voices: brand strategists, designers, retail consultants, diversity specialists, sociologists, and yes, former Valmora employees who had spoken out and never been heard. At the center of the table was a single question written on a large digital display. What should luxury feel like for everyone? The discussion that followed was heated, honest, and transformative. It shouldn't feel like a test, said one former employee. Like you have to prove your worth before someone will even talk to you. Luxury should be about experience, said another. Not exclusion, not coded language, not profiling. Price doesn't have to mean elitism, said a retail strategist. It can mean craftsmanship, story, detail. But we've layered on this whole theater that tells people, if you're not rich or white, this isn't for you. Layla listened quietly, taking notes, nodding at key moments. Then she stood. I'm not here to slap my name on a rebrand and pretend Valmora didn't happen, she said. I'm here to reimagine what luxury could mean for everyone. I don't want this to just be another black woman rises above adversity story. I want it to be the moment an entire industry looked in the mirror and did better. The room erupted in quiet applause. Not loud, not performative. Just enough to signal agreement. Understanding, readiness. Over the next 3 weeks, the Monroe team moved fast. A new name was announced. Legacy. The logo? A golden arc above the letter L, symbolizing both a bridge and a crown. The tagline? Luxury rewritten. Layla was named creative director of the brand and given full autonomy to rebuild from the ground up. Every store would be renovated, every staff member retrained, every product line evaluated not just for quality, but for accessibility, sustainability, and cultural awareness. But even amid the high-level decisions, Layla never disconnected from the ground. She personally visited Valmora locations in Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, and San Francisco, each one with its own microculture, and each one haunted by stories just like hers. In Atlanta, she met a Nigerian-American woman who was once told her accent was intimidating to other clients. In Chicago, a trans employee recalled being forced to work in the stockroom because we're not sure what the customers will think. In San Francisco, an associate remembered being reprimanded for helping a teenager who couldn't possibly afford anything. Each story cracked something open in Layla. By the time she returned to New York, her vision had evolved. This isn't just about hiring a diverse team, she told her leadership. It's about ensuring everyone, from entry-level to executive, is trained not just in product knowledge, but in humanity. We're going to teach emotional intelligence, implicit bias, cultural fluency. The team stared at her. She smiled. That's right, skincare meets sociology. Meanwhile, Caleb was navigating the business side. Stockholders from Orion Prestige Group weren't happy. They demanded explanations for the sudden shift. They sent lawyers, lobbyists, even media statements criticizing the woke rebranding and forecasting economic doom. Caleb met them all with data. Valmora's revenue plateaued for the past 3 years, he said during a shareholder call. You're not losing tradition. You're gaining vision. Within 1 month of our acquisition, our projected net growth is up 19%, and social engagement has risen 47%. Inclusion isn't a liability, it's an edge. The numbers didn't lie. Investors began to fall in line. 6 weeks after Layla was thrown out of Almora, she stood in front of the same Madison Avenue storefront. The windows were no longer icy and exclusive. The new glass was warm-tinted, etched with welcoming symbols from multiple cultures. A line had already formed outside, people of all ages, skin tones, and backgrounds. A ribbon stretched across the entrance. In her white pantsuit with her natural curls pinned back in gold-accented braids, Layla took the scissors in hand. "Welcome to Legacy," she said. "Where beauty starts with how we treat each other." The crowd erupted in cheers. As she cut the ribbon, Caleb stood beside her, pride visible in his eyes. The first week, Legacy outperformed Valmora's highest-grossing month in company history. And inside the store, changes were more than cosmetic. Product displays included price tags, no more guessing games. Name tags listed staff languages to help international clients feel seen. Seating areas were more inclusive for different body types. Braille cards were available for each product's ingredients. Samples were offered without condescension. But the most noticeable difference? The energy. People didn't walk in feeling judged, they walked in feeling welcome. At the rear of the store, near a display of Legacy's new limited edition serum line, Layla spotted a young woman lingering. She wore a faded denim jacket and held her phone tight, hesitating to pick up a tester. Layla approached gently. "Looking at the Golden Vitra serum?" she asked. The girl nodded. "It's beautiful, but I don't think I'm your target customer." Layla smiled. "Let me tell you a secret. Neither was I, but now I run the place." The girl laughed, startled. "Wait, you're... her? The one from..." Layla nodded. "Yeah, that was me. But this isn't about that day." 3 months after its rebirth, Legacy was no longer a rebranded store. It was a movement. On a cool winter morning, Layla Monroe stood at the rooftop terrace of the newly redesigned Legacy flagship location in Los Angeles. The view stretched endlessly, sun rising over the Pacific horizon, casting golden light across the city skyline. Around her, final preparations were underway for the Legacy Global Creators Summit, an event that had sold out within 48 hours, with attendees flying in from Tokyo, Cape Town, London, Sao Paulo, and beyond. What had once been a single store scandal on Madison Avenue had now evolved into an international conversation about who luxury was really for. And Legacy had stepped into that vacuum like a lightning bolt, rewriting the rules of status, style, and service. But the road hadn't been easy. In the weeks following the launch, Layla had received hundreds, no, thousands of messages, some filled with gratitude, others with skepticism, and a few laced with venom. Luxury is supposed to be exclusive. You're diluting the brand by making it too accessible. Letting everyone in makes it feel cheaper. Layla had read them all, and with every word she felt more convinced of her mission. "We're not lowering the bar," she told a major fashion publication. "We're removing the locked door in front of it." She didn't need to prove her success. The numbers did that for her. Revenue had increased by 38% across all reopened stores. Customer satisfaction ratings reached a record 94%. The average transaction value was up 22%. Legacy's social media following had grown by 1.3 million in 90 days. But beyond the metrics, there was something far more meaningful taking root. Trust. Layla's vision extended beyond just products and profits. She wanted to build a platform for creators who had always been excluded from the conversation. Scientists, chemists, designers, and artisans who had been ignored by traditional luxury brands because they didn't look the part. Thus was born the Legacy Creators Initiative, a mentorship and incubation program led directly by Layla and her executive team. The rules were simple. No resumes, no Ivy League degree requirements. Just raw talent, creativity, and a desire to innovate. From over 12,000 submissions, the team selected 10 visionaries for the inaugural cohort. Among them, Yasmin Jalili, an Iranian-American chemist developing halal-certified skincare using cactus oil native to her grandmother's village. Dante Bell, a Detroit-based visual designer who used graffiti-inspired textures to create packaging that told stories of resilience. Amara Okoye, a Nigerian-born MIT graduate, focused on biotech-driven moisturizers for sensitive, melanin-rich skin. Bethany Fields, the former Valmora associate who had spoken up on the day Layla was removed. Her grandmother's recipes had inspired a line of holistic skin balms passed down through generations. For Layla, the program wasn't charity, it was restoration. "These people don't need saving," she told her board. "They need someone to hold the damn door open." One Friday afternoon, Layla walked into the Legacy studio, a dedicated floor above the Madison Avenue store. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the space in natural light. Desks lined with samples, prototypes, sketches, botanical research, and handwritten notes buzzed with energy. Bethany looked up from her workstation where she was testing a serum consistency with an eyedropper. Layla smiled. "How's the balm coming along?" Bethany beamed. "We've figured out how to stabilize it for shelf life without losing that velvety finish." Layla picked up a jar, twisting the cap open. The scent, notes of turmeric, coconut, and something soft and floral, floated into the air. "My grandmother called it Earth's Whisper," Bethany said. "She used it when I had chicken pox as a kid." Layla nodded. "We're going to bring her whisper to the world." She wasn't exaggerating. Bethany's line would soon appear in the front window of every Legacy store, alongside products crafted by other Creator Initiative alumni. No longer hidden behind industry gatekeeping. Now, front and center. Back in her office that evening, Layla sat with Caleb, debriefing the latest investor meeting. "They're thrilled," Caleb said, leaning back in the chair across from her. "Especially after last quarter's earnings. Your vision is officially outperforming the old ways of doing business." Layla laughed softly. Who would have thought inclusion could be profitable? He grinned. "We always knew." Then, more seriously, he added, "What's next?" She hesitated, then walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, her reflection framed by the city lights. "I don't want Legacy to just be a brand," she said. "I want it to be a blueprint." Caleb stood and joined her at the glass. "For what?" "For what happens when power and purpose meet," she said. "For what it looks like when a woman who was once told she didn't belong owns the building instead." The next morning, Layla received a letter. Not an email, not a DM. A handwritten note in heavy ivory paper, embossed in gold. "Dear Mrs. Monroe, I owe you an apology. I was a senior buyer for Valmora for 8 years. I sat in meetings where we quietly categorized clients by desirability. I defended policies that excluded more than they included. When I watched the video of what happened to you, I felt shame. When I saw what you built in its place, I felt hope. I've since resigned, and I'm starting over. Because of you, thank you." JT Layla stared at the note for a long time, then folded it, placed it in her top drawer, and whispered, "That's the real profit." 2 weeks later, Legacy launched its first international flagship in Tokyo, not in the luxury district of Ginza, but in a vibrant neighborhood known for its artistry and youth culture. The store opening was preceded by a street fashion parade featuring models of every skin tone, gender identity, age, and body type. In the center of the procession was a message displayed on silk banners in 5 languages. "Everyone belongs in beauty." As the crowd erupted in applause, Caleb leaned toward Layla and whispered, "You've created a global brand." She smiled without turning. "No," she said, "we've created global belonging." Meanwhile, across town in New York, a very different scene was playing out. Inside a discount cosmetics chain in Harlem, a former store director named Cameron Latimer stood behind a counter wearing a red employee vest with his name stitched in white block letters. A young black woman approached him holding 2 shades of foundation. "Excuse me, sir," she asked politely. "Which of these would you recommend for deeper undertones?" Cameron cleared his throat, swallowing what remained of his former pride. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "That one on the left, shade 410, is specifically made for rich undertones. I can grab you a sample if you'd like." The irony wasn't lost on him. But it wasn't about irony anymore. It was about learning the cost of assuming someone's worth. And finally, understanding that true luxury wasn't about who you served, it was about how you served. Back at Legacy, the Creators Summit drew to a close with a final panel, moderated by Layla herself. Before the lights dimmed, she addressed the crowd. "When I walked into a store last year, I was told I didn't belong, that I couldn't afford to be in that space, that my presence was disruptive." She paused. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, is that I wasn't there to fit in. I was there to change everything. The room rose to its feet. And in that moment, every person, whether student or CEO, chemist or consumer, understood. Legacy wasn't a company. It was a revolution. Layla Monroe had always believed in dignity, quiet strength, the power of measured responses, and the clarity that comes when you know who you are, regardless of how others choose to see you. But somewhere along the road from humiliation to revolution, Layla discovered something else. Power isn't just for defense. It's for creation. 6 months had passed since she was escorted out of Valmora Lux in front of dozens of strangers and camera phones. 6 months since she stood outside with her heart pounding, her pride bruised, and her hands trembling as she called her husband. She had walked into that store for skincare. She had walked out with a mission, and now, standing at the newly unveiled Legacy Leadership Academy in downtown Manhattan, a center for training young professionals in inclusive leadership, luxury ethics, and entrepreneurial innovation, Layla realized something she hadn't allowed herself to say until that moment. She had become someone new, not because of the success, but because of who she had chosen to become in response to failure, injustice, and erasure. The day began early. 6:15 a.m. as always. Layla's alarm chimed softly from the nightstand, followed by a gentle vibration on her wrist. She slipped from beneath the linen sheets, tied her silk robe, and walked to the east-facing balcony. The skyline shimmered in silence. For a few precious minutes, the city that never slept had stilled itself just for her. She closed her eyes and breathed in the morning air. A year ago, she would have filled this moment with preparation. Meetings, emails, pitches. Now, her mornings began with something different. Stillness. Because leadership wasn't just about pushing forward. It was about standing still long enough to listen. To yourself. To others. To the truth underneath the noise. Later that morning, Layla stepped into the Academy's main auditorium, where a group of 75 scholarship recipients were seated, buzzing with anticipation. Young professionals, mostly women and people of color, some in suits, others in hoodies, all with fire in their eyes. Layla didn't enter through the back or from behind a curtain. She walked right down the aisle, taking her time, locking eyes with students as she passed. Some recognized her instantly. Others whispered excitedly to their neighbors. A few simply stared, knowing they were witnessing a woman who had broken every mold set before her. She took the stage with no introduction, because by now she didn't need one. "When I was a little girl," Layla began, "I used to sit on the edge of my bed and imagine what it would feel like to walk into a room and not be underestimated." She paused, letting the words sink in. Not over-explained to. Not looked past. Not judged before I opened my mouth. Just seen. Just heard. She looked around the room. "Raise your hand if you've ever been underestimated." Almost every hand went up. Layla smiled. "Then you already know what it feels like to be more powerful than they expected." She didn't read from notes. She didn't need slides. She told her story, briefly, without embellishment. And then she told theirs. Legacy isn't about skincare. It's not about branding. It's not even about what happened to me in that store. You see, she said. It's about what happens when you realize the door you've been trying to walk through your whole life. You were meant to own the building. Later that evening, Caleb joined her on the terrace of their Harlem brownstone, newly renovated, intentionally chosen over a second penthouse. Not because they needed more space, but because they wanted more ground. You're different now, Caleb said as he poured her a glass of wine. Not harder, just fuller. Layla smiled, brushing her fingers across his. Maybe for the first time, she said softly, I feel like I'm not just reacting to the world. I'm shaping it. Caleb looked at her the way he had at that first charity gala years ago, when she was too busy working the event to realize she had caught the eye of the youngest tech billionaire in the room. I always knew you would, he said. But growth doesn't come without resistance. As Legacy continued its meteoric rise, traditional luxury competitors began to fire back. Some launched thinly veiled marketing campaigns that leaned into phrases like refined tradition and elegance with exclusivity. Others attempted to mimic Layla's inclusive approach, but without authenticity, the efforts rang hollow. Customers noticed, critics roasted. Still, the backlash grew louder. At a private dinner in Milan, a French fashion CEO was overheard saying, Luxury is meant to be unreachable. The minute you let everyone in, you cheapen the magic. Layla heard about the comment 2 days later. She didn't release a statement, didn't tweet. Instead, she responded the way she always had, by building something better. In Paris, Legacy opened its newest location, not on the Champs-Élysées, but in the heart of Le Marais, where cultures and classes blended on cobblestone streets lined with art galleries, bookstores, and pastry shops. The launch wasn't just about skincare, it featured poetry readings, portrait photography exhibits of intergenerational beauty, and a room where guests could record their own stories of being judged or underestimated, an ongoing archive Layla titled The Museum of Misjudgment. People waited in line for hours, not for product, but for healing. And that's when Layla realized something profound. Her brand had become a balm, not just for the skin, but for the soul. One afternoon, she received a message from a woman named Celeste. My daughter is 9. She came home from school crying because her classmates said she couldn't be a princess because of her skin tone. That night, she saw a video of you giving a speech in Tokyo. She turned to me and said, Mom, she looks like me, and she runs the castle. Thank you for giving her that. Layla cried. Not publicly, not performatively, just in the quiet of her office. Because impact doesn't always come in headlines. Sometimes it comes in whispers. Even as her influence expanded, Layla didn't let go of her own growth. She took a leadership sabbatical, 30 days away from the boardroom, where she volunteered at a community center in the Bronx. No cameras, no press, just hours spent mentoring teen girls on entrepreneurship, helping them create mini business plans, and showing them how to pitch with power. It reminded her of who she was before the luxury, before the money, before the movement. A girl who once sold handmade lip balms at church to help her mom pay the light bill. She didn't just tell the students her story. She showed them how to write their own. By year's end, Layla Monroe was named Time Magazine's Woman of the Year. Not just for the rebranding of a billion-dollar company. Not just for disrupting the retail industry, but for showing the world that grace, grit, and growth could coexist and lead. In her interview, the journalist asked, What do you want people to remember most about your journey? Layla thought for a moment, then answered, That I didn't just survive the moment, I transformed because of it. And she had, from daughter of immigrants, to Harvard graduate, to entrepreneur, to icon, but more importantly, to builder of bridges no one had dared walk across before. The lights dimmed inside the United Nations Assembly Hall. Representatives from over 100 countries had gathered for the inaugural Global Equity and Innovation Forum, a historic event focused on redefining the future of inclusive economic models, ethical enterprise, and corporate responsibility. At the center of the grand stage stood a single gold-accented podium, flanked by transparent panels etched with the phrase, Human dignity is not a luxury, it's a standard. The lights flared gently, music faded, and the crowd rose to its feet as Layla Monroe walked out in silence. No announcement, no fanfare, just reverence. She wore a black cape blazer over a flowing cream jumpsuit, her natural hair pulled into a high braided bun. Around her neck rested a thin golden necklace inscribed with one word, legacy. She paused at the podium, took a breath, and spoke with a voice equal parts silk and steel. A little over a year ago, I was mistaken for a tourist. I walked into a boutique with no flash, no labels, and no entourage. I was told I didn't belong, that I couldn't afford what was inside, that I wasn't the kind of person that place was built for. And they were right. I wasn't the kind of person that place was built for. But I became the kind of person who would rebuild it into something better. Not just for myself, but for everyone they'd ever turned away. That store was called Valmore Lux. Now it's called Legacy. A ripple of applause began, but Layla raised her hand softly and it faded again. You see, when I was growing up, luxury wasn't just out of reach. It didn't speak my language. It didn't acknowledge the texture of my mother's hands, the rhythm of my father's accent, the scent of shea butter on my pillowcase. It didn't see us, and when it did, it made us feel like intruders. So I stopped knocking on the door, and I started building my own. She smiled, letting the words settle in the air like perfume. I didn't build Legacy to sell products. I built it to sell possibility. I built it for the girl in Nairobi who thinks she needs to whiten her skin to be accepted. For the boy in Mumbai who's told his dark complexion isn't marketable. For the transgender woman in the Bronx who just wants someone to look her in the eye when she shops. For the grandmother in Atlanta who still tucks money into her bra because she was once told she couldn't afford to be trusted. For every person who's ever been asked, "Are you sure this is your size?" Or, "Can I see your ID before you try that on?" For every soul who has ever been reduced to a stereotype. Legacy is not just my company, it's my answer. This time the applause came like a wave. But again, Layla raised her hand, and silence fell once more. Let me be clear, inclusion is not a trend. Diversity is not a quota. Belonging is not charity, it's strategy, it's humanity. It's how we design the world we deserve, because when you invite... One day, while visiting a Legacy store in New Orleans, Layla walked past a group of schoolgirls on a field trip. One of them, no older than 10, tugged her teacher's sleeve. "Miss," she whispered, pointing at Layla. "Is that the lady who made Beauty Fair?" Layla paused. Turned. Kneeling down, she asked, "What's your name?" "Zuri," the girl said shyly. "Well, Zuri," Layla smiled, "you're already beautiful. I just made a place that says it out loud." That night, Layla journaled 5 words before heading to bed. Power is best when shared. And in that sentence was her entire story. Not of vengeance, not of dominance, but of transformation, grace, and the fire that turns exclusion into elevation. Legacy was no longer just a brand. It was a signal that the world was ready for better. And she had lit the first flame. Life lesson. True power is not defined by wealth, status, or who gets to sit at the top. It's defined by who's willing to create space for others to rise. Layla Monroe's journey from being humiliated in a luxury boutique to leading a global revolution wasn't about revenge. It was about purpose. She didn't allow the pain of exclusion to harden her. Instead, she used it to reimagine what luxury, leadership, and legacy could mean. She didn't shout. She reshaped. She didn't destroy. She rebuilt. She didn't just demand respect. She gave it to those long denied. The lesson is clear. When we stop asking for permission to belong and instead own our power to transform the system itself, we don't just change the narrative for ourselves. We change it for generations. Your worth is not determined by what others expect of you or how they choose to see you. It's determined by how boldly you choose to see yourself and what you do with that clarity. Real-life application. You may never buy a luxury brand or walk into a boardroom like Layla Monroe, but her lesson applies to all of us. When you witness injustice, you have a choice. Accept it, ignore it, or change it. Whether you're a student, entrepreneur, parent, or professional, You hold the ability to make your environment more inclusive, more humane, more just. Start small. Speak up when someone's being excluded. Mentor someone who reminds you of your younger self. Redefine what success looks like, not just for you, but for your community. The systems around us weren't built to serve everyone equally. But like Layla, you don't need to tear them down with rage. You can rebuild them with vision, with courage, and with love. Because real legacy isn't what you accumulate, it's what you awaken in others.